A very good afternoon to all our viewers. I'm Shivani Srivastav, Relationships Manager at Global Education and Training Institute. I welcome you all this afternoon to this very interesting session with Miss Shiny Shajil, who is the Activities Coordinator at Billabong High International School in Chennai. And I'm very happy to tell you that she has been an educator and she has taught subjects like English, history, geography, and economics. And to our surprise, she is a biology teacher. She enjoys writing, she enjoys penning down her thoughts, which has helped her earn the position as the editor in chief of the school's weekly newsletter, that is Cherries. And she's very, interested and enthusiastic towards teaching the students and developing a very healthy and happy relations with her students. Today, ma'am is here with us and she will be speaking on creative teaching, a workshop highlighting online and offline teaching methods. So, without wasting much of our time, I once again welcome ma'am and over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Shivani, for the humble welcome and introduction. I'm truly hyped up to conduct this workshop, and I thank Dr. Sunita Gandhi and her brainchild, GETI, Global Education and Training Institute, for providing such a splendid platform for educators like me. I am indeed grateful for this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I hope by the end of the session, you are all benefited by this workshop. Ms. Shivani, it would be great if you could screen share my PPT. Thank you. Now, coming to my workshop, as already mentioned, I shall be talking about creative teaching, where I shall highlight the online and offline teaching methods. I would like to state a disclaimer. This workshop shall not be an active learning session. Instead, shall be a lecture-based session owing to the limited real-time interactions I shall have with you, my audience. So my ultimate aim over here is to provide you with as many takeaways as possible to promote happy learning. So let's begin. Now, coming to what we are going to discuss today, or to say the learning objective for today's workshop, I have listed it down for you. So by the end of today's workshop, you'll be able to understand the principle of teaching and learning. You'll be also able to list down the key characteristics of effective teaching. And you'll be able to answer the question how to plan lessons that have clear aims and objectives and a coherent structure. And finally, we'll be reviewing teaching methods and learning activities that engage and motivate learners. So with this in mind, let's work towards reaching these objectives. All right, now coming to objective number 1, understanding the principle of teaching and learning. Now, to understand the principle of teaching and learning, we must understand the role of a teacher. Who exactly is a teacher and who exactly is a learner? And to understand this, we must understand the nuances that goes behind teaching. Well, when it comes to any topic, okay, so when we are trying to understand more about that topic, we usually refer to theories, hypotheses, and the results or conclusions from experiments. So teaching involves interacting with the greatest of minds, children. So it's such a humongous topic, and there are a lot of theories and research that has gone behind understanding and trying to decode this noble act of teaching. So let's also go back to our basics and understand the theories of education to decode what is the role of a teacher. Now, coming to teaching and learning. Teaching and learning are based on theories, and according to these theories, we can state that the process of teaching and learning was explained through a pathway of three mainly accepted concepts. We can go to the next slide, Ms. Shivani. Okay. So, teaching and learning based on theories has been defined to have undergone a pathway through three major widely accepted concepts, and they are behavioralism, constructivism, and finally, the most acceptable one, that is experimental learning. So, let's start with the first theory. I guess we are having a bit of a lag in the PPT. Yes, thank you, Ms. Shivani. Right. So now let's start with the first theory. This theory defined or explained what a teacher should ideally do, or what is the effect of a teacher on a learner. And this theory was stated by Pavlov. He was a psychologist and was a man behind the theory called conditional reflex. So it's a research in which it signaled the start of the concept of behavioralism. So what is this? All big words. All right. So well, it's quite simple. According to him, he stated that by constant reaffirmations, by following a constant pattern, we can condition the behavior of a child. So he said that teaching is about conditioning the behavior of the child. But how does that happen? By following a certain pattern. Now, to prove this theory, he did an experiment. In that experiment, he took he had a pet dog. So he used to ring a bell, and following that, he used to give food for the dog. So he kept doing this, and over a course of time, he noticed that uh, irrespective of if he plays a food or not, when the bell was rung, the dog ended up salivating because it felt that it's going to get food. So he used the inference from this experiment to state his point, to state that if we keep repeating something, if we keep reaffirming something, we can change the behavior of a child, and that is the role of a teacher. So this concept of behavioralism states that learning is therefore defined as a change in behavior. Next slide, please. But this was not widely accepted, because he said that you're trying to bound children to do in work in a specific way. So then in came Skinner, another psychologist. He believed that behavior, yes, is a function, as a teacher we affect behavior, but behavior is a function of its consequences. That is, he meant that learners will repeat a desired behavior if we provide a positive reinforcement to them. That is, a child will repeat a behavior if he or she is given a positive feedback, and a child will not repeat a behavior if he or she is given a negative feedback. So, what did Skinner try to mean is that as teachers, we're supposed to give feedback, positive or negative, immediate feedback, and that way we'll be able to change the behavior, mold the behavior of a child. But he had also deviated towards corporal punishments, which was not widely accepted. And then came the concept of cognitivism. So in this process, they said that okay, behavior is one side, let's leave behavior to one end. Learning has to do with the mind. Okay, so in came the fact that new knowledge is built upon prior knowledge. That is, children will have some knowledge already available, and as a teacher, we got to build on their prior knowledge. Now, changes in behavior will be observed as they build their knowledge. Okay, but it was an indication of the fact that it is happening in the learner's mind. So behavior is not based on positive or negative feedback, or based on ringing a bell. It is ultimately, it all ends down to what is happening in the mind of the child. If the child keeps getting new information, the behavior of the child is molded. So in short, cognitivism uses the metaphor. It compares the human mind to a computer, and it says that information should be put in, the information gets processed, and you get an output out of it. Now, based on all this, then came another person, in came another scientist, Mr. Brunner. So he talked about the concept of constructivism. So in this, he said that learning is an active process, and that you keep constructing knowledge as it is being acquired. Next slide, please, Ms. Shivani. So the learner keeps building on his or her prior knowledge, but the way in which he or she builds the prior knowledge is based upon their past experience, it's based upon their cultural factors. So each and every individual develops in a different way. So we give them information, but that information is processed in a different way, and the individual keeps building on that information. And this was a very widely accepted model because it talked about how our way of acquiring knowledge worked. So then came Vygotsky, who said, yes, Brunner is right. We do construct knowledge on top of prior knowledge, and we keep doing that. But he said that Brunner has missed a point. What point did Brunner miss? Brunner missed the point that you build on more knowledge with the help of social interaction. He stated that a child should be socially active. He or she should interact. He or she should get be good communicators. So he said that with the help of social interaction and with the help of good communication, learning takes place. And this was how Brunner's model of constructivism got converted into social constructivism, and it has also been widely acclaimed. Now, during this particular theory, Vygotsky also stated the fact that there should be a more knowledgeable other in a child's life. Who's a more knowledgeable other? Yes, of course, teachers and another child, a peer. Okay, so he or she can help the child in acquiring more knowledge. So this again hints the fact that a teacher must be a more knowledgeable other. That is, a teacher must keep building on her skills, must keep building on her knowledge. She must be ideally the most knowledgeable other for a child. And finally, he also talked that as a teacher, we have to allow the children to move through a process called a zone of proximal development, where the child is first dependent on the more knowledgeable other, and then the child ends up becoming independent, where he or she can do anything independently. That is the main aim of education. So these were the main two theories, and it was followed in a very high way for many years. But then came another scientist, and he proposed, he was Mr. Kolb. He proposed the concept of experimental learning. Ms. Shavani, next slide. Yeah. So Mr. Kolb, he told that learning happens when children experience things. So it is not just if you have a more knowledgeable other, or it's not just based upon information. If you allow children to experience things, they learn. So what do we understand from all these theories? So I have been talking about so many theories. I started out with a question, what is it, who is a teacher and who is a learner? Now, based on these theories, I would like to state a point that we need not follow these theories blindly. Okay, in order to become an effective teacher, we must be smart enough to take the snippets from each of these theories, the selling point from each of these theories. Now, for example, Mr. Pavlov had told, according to Mr. Pavlov, from his theory, we can understand the fact that as a teacher, we are indirectly affecting the behavior of our children. So we got to be at our best of behavior, because our behavior might seep into them whether you like it or not. So that is one learning that we can take from Mr. Pavlov to become an effective teacher. The second learning that we can take from Mr. Skinner is that as a teacher, we must give immediate feedback, and that feedback must be positive. We have to give constructive feedback so that the children keep repeating something that they are good at. And then from Brunner, okay, so Brunner had talked about constructivism. So from Brunner, we can understand that prior knowledge testing is necessary. And as teachers, we must test the prior knowledge of a child and then keep building on that prior knowledge. And then from Vygotsky about social constructivism, we can understand that we must provide a social environment for the children. That is, we must allow for social interaction to take place, and we must be a more knowledgeable other, and we must keep improving upon our skills. And finally, based on codes theory, we can understand that we have to allow our children to experience things so that they can learn. So from these theories, what can we conclude? We can conclude that we have to take certain snippets from this theory and put it into practice in order for us to become an effective teacher. Fine. So, who exactly is a teacher? So, I told you that these are the concepts that we have to, take in. These are the learnings and these are the theories. But who exactly is a teacher? According to me, a teacher is someone who makes the best decisions, which ultimately helps a student learn. So, Ms. Shivani, next slide, please. Right. So a teacher is someone who makes the best decisions. Okay. As a teacher, I'm sure that most of you who are teachers who are viewing this workshop, you would agree that we make countless decisions to improve student learning. Now, these decisions can be either the decisions that we make while we are alone, while we are working at our desk, while we are planning for the week. Okay, so what exactly are we going to do for the week? Or there are decisions that we make on spot. Okay, so they are more dynamic decisions. So based upon the response that we get from our children, we immediately make a decision. So these are the main two types of decisions that we make. However, we can break down decisions into three categories, and they are the decisions that we do while planning, the decisions that we do while implementing something, and while assessing something. Now, for example, a good teacher must make the right decisions while she's planning her session. Okay, point number one. Then she must be smart enough to make impromptu decisions while taking class based on the response. So if she finds that her students are not enjoying an activity, she should always have a plan B at the back of her mind, and she must put that into action. She must not be like, okay, the session ended, next session, let me think about it. No, you're ending up wasting a session. So you, as a teacher, you have to make a good decision, impromptu decision, on the spot decision based upon the response that you get from the children. And finally, a good teacher will make the best decisions while assessing the children. So while assessing this children, she will understand what went wrong in the class. Why was I not able to reach this child since the assessment grade has come low? Then she will make decisions so that it will further help her in the upcoming sessions. So this would define a good teacher, a teacher who makes the right decision. Okay, so now that we have understood what is the role of a teacher based on theories and understood what an ideal teacher is supposed to do, let's list out the essential characteristics of a teacher. Okay, it's a bit of a difficult task, but let's try to list down the essential characteristics of a teacher. When we think about our most effective teacher, so the teacher who made a difference in your life, if you ask me, I always would point out to a teacher who gave me the most warmth, the one who was the most caring. I would remember that teacher, and I'm sure you all will recollect that teacher who was really caring to you. But at the same time, we'll also think about those teachers who are creative, okay, in their way of instruction, in their way of teaching strategies that they used, their command of content, and their unique presentation skills. So these are the things that comes to our mind when we think, okay, who is your favorite teacher, or who is that teacher that made a difference in our life? But apart from these, that we can, based on research, we can classify the characteristics of a good teacher into three categories. One is knowledge, the second one is skills, and the third one is disposition. So an effective teacher will have knowledge. Okay, What knowledge? Is it just the knowledge that she has related to the subject that she's teaching? No. The knowledge can be divided again into three parts. She or he must have professional knowledge, that is knowledge about her profession or his profession. Education as a whole, they must have knowledge about education, and they must keep building upon that knowledge. They can't think like a teacher who worked about 10 years back. They must keep updating themselves. Then the second thing, when it comes to knowledge, they must have pedagogical knowledge, that is knowledge about the theories that we just discussed. So they must have that knowledge as well. And finally, they must have knowledge related to the subject that they're teaching, content knowledge, because ultimately they are the most knowledgeable other. Then comes to skills. Now, what skills? A teacher must have the skills that can be used, okay, to apply these knowledge whenever required. So only if he or she has the skills can they apply the knowledge that they have. Okay, I have a lot of knowledge, but if I can't apply it, then I do not qualify as an effective teacher. And finally, disposition. Disposition, as in a teacher must have appropriate values and commitment and ethics that showcase a positive behavior. Again, back to Pavlov, we directly or indirectly affect the behavior of the child. So as an effective teacher, we must have appropriate ethics related to education. We must have a commitment towards education, and we must have the appropriate values towards education. And that is what defines a good teacher. So ultimately, who is a teacher? I would like to quote from the book, A Good Teacher in Every Classroom. So in this book, they talk about who is a teacher or what is the value of a teacher. Ms. Shivani, next slide. So in that book, they quote, teachers are the most important factors in improving schools. Attempt to reform or improve education depends on the knowledge, skills, and commitment of teachers. So with this, we can understand that teachers are the sole light of education. So without a teacher, education doesn't have meaning. So that is the role of a teacher. The teacher holds a very high role. So when I think about a teacher and her role, there's this story that comes up on, in my mind. And it's a story about the water bearer and the cracked pot. Okay. So there was this water bearer. Every morning, he used to carry two pots over his shoulder from the river to his master's house. And as you can see in this picture, that one of the pot was perfect, whereas the other pot was cracked. So by the time this water bearer used to reach the master's house, the cracked pot would be half empty, while the perfect pot would be completely filled with water. So this went on for a while, and the perfect pot was really proud of itself and its accomplishment, whereas the cracked pot was, guilty. He felt that he had let down the water bearer. So one day he decided to, have a conversation with the water bearer, and he said, I am ashamed. I keep letting you down. Okay. I deliver only half of the water. Why don't you smash me? Why don't you break me and get another pot? Why do you keep carrying me? And, you're just wasting your energy. So the water bearer was shocked. He said, oh dear pot, see, before I say something, I want you to be more observant this time. As I take you from the river to the master's house, I want you to pay attention to the pathway. So the cracked pot agreed. And when the cracked pot did as said by the water bearer, to his surprise, the cracked pot noticed so many flowers blooming on his side of the lane. So the water bearer then said, see, I took advantage of your crack and planted some seeds on the pathway, and you unknowingly ended up watering them every day. Without you, we wouldn't have those, beautiful flowers. Now, this is true. Whatever is true to the pot is also true to us as well. Now, as well as our children. See, we all have certain cracks and we all have certain flaws. But the challenge for a teacher is to find the hidden talent and that unique talent within each child. A true teacher discovers the hidden talent within their children. They don't just see the flaws, they try to see how can I mend those flaws and how can I bring out the hidden talent of the children. So that, according to me, defines a teacher. We must be able to identify talent and we must be able to motivate our children to do more. And with this, we have ended up completing two of our learning objectives for today's workshop. So now we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So, yes, the third learning objective is how to plan lessons that have a clear aim and objectives and a coherent structure. Okay, now coming to lesson planning. Now that we know what makes an effective teacher, let's go deep into lessons and how to plan them. The decisions. Okay, so a teacher makes the best decisions. We're going to talk about decisions. So the four components of a lesson plan have been listed out to you. I am sure that most of you have this at the back of your minds, but I'm just going to reaffirm the same. So the first major component of a lesson plan is the learning objective. Okay, you can't start a lesson without its objective. The second one is activities to achieve that objective. Okay, it should not be activities that is irrelevant to the objective. It should be activities that help achieve the objective. And then assessment. So you finish taking the class, but you have to be sure whether your students have understood. So checking the learner's performance. And finally, you have to evaluate whether the children liked it or not. And you must reflect on your teaching practices. So these are the four components of lesson planning. So while you're going to sit down to plan a lesson, these four components must come into your mind. But now I want to make it more simple, okay, for you. So let's try to simplify a lesson. According to me, an ideal lesson must contain these 9 elements, okay? And it is up to you, however, how are you going to frame these elements? It's at your discretion. But these are the 9 elements that must be there in every session that you're taking. Okay, so that is attendance, learning objective. You have to have a success criteria, a starter activity, procedure, braid breaks, plenary, were we successful, and feedback. Okay, so there's a lot to take in just one slide. So I have broken it down. And as I talk about each of these elements, I'll be giving you some ways in which you can make it creative, both online and offline. So let's go to attendance. When I tell attendance, the first thing that comes to our mind is present ma'am, present sir. So that is not what I'm exactly meaning. See, each student every day is on a journey of discovery. And I believe that every single teacher can make a huge difference in that voyage towards discovery. So we can teach children that they are special and that they are not just one of the 50 goldfish in a small pond with a limited food supply. One of the greatest paradoxes in life is that people are resilient. Yes, we are resilient, but we are also incredibly fragile. So that is especially true with children. See, it's absolutely hard work to be a child, and that too during the lockdown, it's absolute hard work. They're just stuck up at homes. So, we have to motivate them. We have to show them that we can. And children, they have this wonderful generosity of spirit. See, it takes so little to make them want to try. So you can just affect them just by doing a smile would do, and they'll feel really happy. Yes, they need loving parents and they need a loving home. Yes, of course. But they also need teachers who care and who don't give up on them. Every student needs someone who says, you mean something. And that someone should be a teacher. So here, attendance is not just for record's sake or for documentation purpose. It is a process where you check on them to create a positive environment for learning. So when I'm talking about attendance, I'm not saying you to just call out their names and then you're just doing a documentation of, yes, these students were present. No, you're going to make them feel special. So how can you do that? Next slide, please. So over here, I have a set of pictures before the lockdown. That is before the coronavirus COVID-19. Uh, I had this particular routine in class. So before my session starts, I used to ask my students to line up, and then they get to choose how to greet me. So they can either dance along with me, or they could give me a warm hug, or they could do this crazy clap routine. So by doing this, they used to feel special because they get to choose how to greet me, and the entire classroom will be filled with laughter and happiness. And as a teacher, I will never forget who was present and who was absent, and I can immediately document it as well. But now that COVID-19 came into the picture and we went online, we can't do this, but there are other innovative ways in which attendance can be taken. And some of them are now attendance can be taken with the help of PPTs. So the teachers at my school use a variety of methods, to take attendance. So there are two examples where our nursery school teacher, Miss Devi, she uses, based on her concepts, she adds themes. Okay, so she creates a specific PPT in which the name of the student appears in a very creative way based on the theme that she is handling with her students. And then that for the higher grade students, I use a concept of annotation where I allow the students to doodle and show their presence. So over here they unleash their creativity. Okay, so based on how creative they are, or based on the way they doodle, I'll be able to guess whether they're in a good mood or in a bad mood. Some of them, if they're in a bad mood, they'll just put a tick and then they'll be like, ma'am, no. And then I have to keep working on them. So these are different ways in which attendance can be taken. Chat box is also another option. You can ask them to just type in a message in chat, like stating that they are present and about how they feel today. So that way also you get to know their presence. So these are different ways in which attendance can be taken. Now, why is it important for this process of attendance? See, according to me, it is absolutely important that either during the process of attendance or right after the process of attendance, you got to set, or you got to create a positive environment. You got to make the students feel special. That is when they will show up for your class the next day, okay, with a happy face. Now, you can either start the day with a quote to they can ponder upon that quote. It can be a motivational quote where they can read it out and they're like, wow, so this is something that they can think about. Or you can also ask them how they are feeling. Just ask them, how was it yesterday? What did you spend, how did you spend your time yesterday? And allow them to speak. So that way you create a positive environment. And you must be patient enough and listen. If you're going to cut them short, please don't go and ask them that question. And then finally you can add music and some fun, like by dancing, and they will feel really great. So that is this quote on the side, which is my personal favorite. Okay, so we are supposed to speak to your children as if they are the wisest, kindest, and most beautiful and magical humans on earth, for what they believe is what they will become. So as teachers, we are supposed to always provide a positive environment. No matter how much stress we are going through, when you enter into class, be it online or offline, you have to create a positive environment. Now that we have done the attendance, what is the next step in our lesson plan? It's the objective. Okay, so a safe environment has been set. Now, why do we have to state the objective? When I was a student, I never remember, my teacher stating the objective. Yes, a topic used to be put on board, but why now we have this trend? Okay, learning objective. Why do we have that? Is because we have to establish a sense of responsibility in the process of learning within our students. They have to take up that responsibility. They have to think, yes, I am responsible. This is what I have to achieve by the end of my class. So your learning objective should state what the students are doing, not what you are going to do as a teacher. You're not going to say, today I'm going to teach this. No, today this is what you're going to do. So you're going to give the ownership to the children. And it is also important that your learning objective must be smart. smart and this at the sense it should be specific, okay, to the point. It should be measurable, that is you have to be able to do an assessment to know whether you have reached that objective. Then it should be attainable. It should not be something that you cannot achieve at all, okay. It should be attainable. It should be relevant to the curriculum that you're teaching, not some random topic that you would like to teach. And finally, it must be time bound. 40 minutes, 30 minutes, it should be time bound. And it is also important that you have to state and restate your objective, because children tend to forget. Now, if it is on an offline platform, you write it on the board and it stays over there. But on an online platform, you can't do that. So for that, you have to keep projecting your learning objective on the screen. And you can tell them, see, we have completed this learning objective, now we're going to go to the next one. So that way they keep getting reminded of the fact that these are their points that they have to achieve by the end of the session. Now, while constructing the learning objective, you should also ensure that they have Bloom's verbs in them. All of you will know who is Bloom and the verbs. So it is also important for you to construct your objective from lots to hots. Okay. So what is lots to hots? Lots is lower order thinking skills and hots is higher order thinking skills. So you have to make your learning objective in such a way that there are lower order thinking skills moving up to higher order thinking skills. Next slide, please. So these are the objectives, how you have to construct them. So you can construct them based on from knowledge to comprehension to application to analysis to evaluation and finally to synthesis. So that is how you are supposed to construct your objectives from lots to hots. All right. Now that the objective has been set, what is the next thing in our mind? Okay, so this is the slide that talks about lots to hots. Yes, Ms. Shivani, next slide. Yes. Okay. So we did the attendance. We have set a positive learning environment. We have told the learning objective. Is that enough? No, we have to state the success criteria. So I happened to attend this workshop in which, the felicitator had mentioned about this concept of success criteria. Before that, I wasn't aware of this topic. This concept. But after that, every day I try to implement it in my class and it has been really effective. So what is a success criteria? Right after stating the learning objective, it is ideal for a teacher to state the success criteria. I will know I was successful in today's class when I can, and then you're going to list it out. Now, how is it different from a learning objective? It is different from a learning objective by the fact that a success criteria is a visual way to show and tell your students the steps they will have to take to be successful in reaching their learning objectives. You're going to break down the learning objective and give them some easy steps that they have to fulfill. And if they fulfill all these steps, they are completing the learning objective. Okay, so it is also important that they read the success criteria, not you. Please do not do the reading. Ask them to read the success criteria. You can write it on the board on an online platform, project it, and ask them to read the success criteria. And this will make them responsible learners and it will help them know how to achieve the learning objective. Okay, so now we have stated the success criteria and everything, and now to the lesson. Okay, the main part of the lesson where teaching takes place, okay, where learning takes place. Okay, so coherence. You have to construct your lesson in a very balanced way, okay, keeping in mind at the back of your head about the theories. Okay, so your lesson must have a good beginning, a good middle, and a good end. Now, when I talk about a clear beginning, I'm talking about prior knowledge. So I have to ensure what do my students already know. I have to test that. After testing that, I will slowly start building on it. Constructivism, okay? That is the middle. But how am I going to construct new knowledge? Am I going to just teach them? No. I'm going to allow them to experience. I'm going to provide active learning, an environment. So I'm going to take them from lots to hots. And then once that is done, I have to have a very good ending. Okay, so you have still something, right, at the end. You can't just uh, stop something at the half. So you should have a satisfactory ending. How can that be done? By summarizing, by consolidating what you have learned. And finally, it is the responsibility of a teacher to ensure that all this happens in a balanced way, in a logical flow. I can't, summarize and then test the knowledge and then start teaching. No, you have to have a logical flow through all this. So this is how you construct your lesson. Okay, so now let us go to the starter activity. So I told about attendance. I told you that you have to set a positive environment. Then you're going to state the learning objective. Then you have stated the success criteria. What is next in our checklist? It is the starter activity. That is, you're going to test their prior knowledge. How can you test the prior knowledge? On an offline method, you can, ask a question, randomly pick out children and ask them to answer. A group discussion can be initiated, and while they are participating in the group discussion, you'll be able to decode whether they know a lot about that topic. There are various ways in which you can test the prior knowledge of your children. Writing, okay, so a small worksheet can be given to them to test it. There are different ways. But now on an online platform, how can you test the prior knowledge of your children? Okay, so this can be done by different ways. Okay, so again, open-ended questioning can be asked. So you put a question on the screen and ask them to answer. But since it's an online platform, there are chances that everyone will want to answer at the same time. So how can you prevent that from happening and ensure that everyone gets a fair chance to express themselves? You can include the use of chat box. Okay, so they have to communicate to you with the help of the chat box, and then you can read out the answers, or you can ask them to read out the answers to their friends. Then there are other ways in which you can introduce polls. Polling is a very interactive way to understand how much they know about a topic. So in platforms such as Zooms, you have inbuilt polling options. But if you're using different platforms and you want to do, there's this particular website called Item Pool, which allows you to do, create your own pools. You can try that out. Okay, so you don't want to do all that. I want to take an easier route. You can always ask them to raise their hand and then give everyone a chance to speak. Then apart from this, you can also ask them to draw, that is sketch. Okay, so how do you ask them to sketch? With the help of annotation tools at different websites that allows you to do group sketching. Then you can ask them to create mind maps and share it. Ask them to write a paragraph, again through chat. And sticky notes. Okay, so sticky notes is something that we used to use in an offline class. It's like a hands-on activity. You give them sticky notes, and whatever they know regarding to that topic, they come and then they put it on the chart or on your notice board that is available. But now in the online platform, can we do that? Yes, of course we can do that. In the next slide, I have shown some pictures in which my students have done, it's a prior knowledge testing that has taken place, where they have used a virtual, sticky notes platform, that is Padlet. That's my favorite, personal favorite. So over here, the children can unleash their creativity. How? They can send it as text. They can doodle it, draw it, and then show it. And then they can also attach Google images, okay, related to that particular topic. So this is some way in which you can test the prior knowledge of the children. And throughout this process is going to be a very quick process, and at the same time the children are going to enjoy. They are actively learning. Okay, so on the side, I have also showed other virtual sticky notes platforms, which you can make a note and use it as required. Okay, so we have tested the, prior knowledge. So we have completed point number 4 in our checklist. Now to the main point, procedure. Okay, so how are we supposed to take the sessions? It should be active learning. Now, in this particular slide, I have mentioned all the different types of active learning techniques that can be implied. What is the difference between passive learning and active learning? In passive learning, now, like how I'm doing right now, okay, this is a lecture session. I keep talking, the teacher keeps talking. I don't get to know what is happening on the other side. Is my audience even awake and listening to what I'm saying? So that is passive learning. But in active, this is something that you're not supposed to do. In active learning, you are supposed to allow the students to do everything, and you're just going to be observant. You're just going to be there. Okay, you're just going to felicitate them in that process, and that is active learning. So how do you do that on an offline method? You can use the any one of these things that I have stated over here. So, like keeping in mind Pavlov, okay, keeping in mind Brunner, and keeping in mind what Vygotsky had said about social interaction, it is important that each of your session at least has one pad work or at least one group work. Okay, that is very important. If it is so, if each of your session has a group work or a pair work, it means that you're successful as a teacher, because you are allowing them to communicate. You are providing them with a more knowledgeable other apart from you. Okay, then think, pair and share. It's again a pair work. Project work, jigsaw is a different type of an activity where students, it's a group work. Then field work and survey, where they experience it. Okay, interviewing a visitor, to interview is very difficult. All right, you have to do a lot of research and then you get to interview. Reading and generating a question, asking a question is also difficult. Then presentations, posters, asking them to do presentation, posters, role play. They have to put themselves into another person's shoe and act. Okay, debate is another one. Quiz is a very effective on active teaching method, but it will more come into assessment. Then discussions, Venn diagram. Okay, so in order to find something is same or state what are the similarities and differences of something, you have to know a lot about it. A graphical organizer, to put all your information in an organized way. Lab work, hands-on activity, plays a very good role in learning. Then hypothesis testing, teaching by asking. So you keep asking them questions. You don't give out the answer, you keep asking them, and they themselves unknowingly come up with answers. Case studies, very effective. It improves reading, it improves analytical skills. Guest lecture, they get to meet someone else, again more knowledgeable other. And computer aided learning, now we are completely through the computer, so that's something that we achieve every day in online class. Okay, so now I won't be able to interact with you people, but I would like you to share any one of a very unique active learning strategy that you utilize in your class, so that people who are viewing are benefited and they can also try that active learning strategy. And after the session, I'll also go back and look at the comments. So please type in any active learning strategy that is unique and you'd like to suggest to your fellow educator. Yep. So now this is about offline teaching. Now to come to online teaching strategies, active teaching strategies. Okay. Now we are separated by a screen. How can I be an active teacher and make my students undergo an active learning process? There are a variety of options available. You can enable group discussions with the help of breakout rooms. In Zoom, we have that option. Okay, or you can always, if you're going through Microsoft, Teams, or through other platforms, you can prior, before the session begins, you can break the students into, categorize the students into different groups and create separate meetings and ask them to do it. But however, in order to monitor them, you should get the help of your fellow colleagues so that they can step in and just be a, observant and a silent listener to what is happening in the session. So breakout rooms is a very good and effective tool for discussions to promote, a social environment between the students. Then comes to video based learning is also an effective tool. The students get to see a video and which has different types of animation. It should be a very short video. Please ensure you don't use big videos in your sessions, because one, streaming is slow, and the second one is that the students feel sleepy. Something crisp, 1 minute, 2 minutes max. The video must have all the information related to it, and then you can ask questions and ensure that you assess the children after a video is being shown, okay, to know its effectiveness. And then hands-on activity. Yes, on an online platform you can do hands-on activities with the help of things that are available in the house. You can ask your students to keep those things ready, and as the session begins you can perform these activities, and it's going to be fun. Then you can always invite online guest lectures, so your colleagues or someone you know who can come and step in for a few minutes and have a talk with the students. So that will also help promote active learning. Then animations and 3D models, PPT. Okay, so PPTs, there are a lot of animations available, and now they have a new addition, 3D models also. The skeleton on the side is an example of that. You can, show its movement, and you can show the parts of the skeleton with the help of just a PPT. Okay, and you can make the PPTs completely interactive. And now that we are online, we have the entire internet in our hands, so you can find a lot of case studies related to the topic that you're teaching. Ask the children to either read that case study before class, and then come to class and share their learnings. That is an example of flipped classroom. Or during class also, you can send the link, and then the students go read it, and then they come back again and they do it. And but they'll be in your presence. You can get to see them because they can open a tab and do this process. Then there's another concept of podcast based learning, where they get to listen to a podcast and then they understand a concept. This, yes, it's quite effective for the higher grade children or for the lower grade when it comes to storytelling. Yeah, for English, it plays a good role for listening skills. Then comes to debates. Debates is a very effective way of on active learning, and since it's online, you can do it in a very professional way also. And then class discussions, ask them to be on, on unmute, and then they can speak and do a discussion, but it's going to be noisy. Okay, and then finally, it is most important that you make the children to move. See, since we are on an online platform, there are chances that they just sit in one place for a very long time. So ask them to move. Give them certain small challenges that require them to move from their desk. For example, if you're going to teach them about plants, you can ask them to go and visit their backyard, or go to the terrace, or go to the balcony where they have a plant, and then they observe it and tell what they see. If they're learning about leaves, go and observe that. Or if they're going to learn about something that is related to things that can be found in the kitchen, ask them to go there. So like that, try to think outside the box and make the children move at least now or then during your sessions. And when it comes to online, there are also different websites where you can do experiments online as well. So these are the different ways in which you can do the online sessions. Okay, so too much of teaching can be absolutely boring. Okay, so too much of learning, even though if it's going to be active learning, children will end up losing their concentration. Their span, that their concentration span is a bit short, and that too because of technology it has become more shorter. So how shall we ensure that the students also get a small break? We have to introduce a concept of brain break. So in between your active learning strategies, you have to introduce a brain break. Now, how can you do that? By introducing small games in your session. So you can either project a quote, like at the start how you projected a quote. If you're not doing that there, you can project a quote in between and ask them to read it, and you have a discussion. It can be a good quote. Then you can also play a song. The song can be based on the suggestion from one of your students, but ensure that every child gets a chance by the end of the term at least. And also you can play a song and you can ask them to dance and move around a bit. Then you can ask them to do exercise. So you can see over here with my grade 8 children, we did a quick neck exercise during our session. It was a brain break. And then you can also include challenges, like ask them to read out a tongue twister, ask them to do a crossword, ask them to solve a riddle, like a rock, paper, scissors. All these are ways in which you can give them a break and then bring them back to your session. But you have to ensure that this brain break is not too long, because then it might affect you from reaching your learning objective. Now, so we have completed your teaching. Okay, so you've completed your teaching, and in between, you have also done the brain breaks. Now, to the part where you're going to summarize or consolidate your learning. Now, that is the plenary. Okay, so this is where you're going to just conclude, okay, this is what I learned, but it is also necessary that you should have reached HOTS by now, okay, higher order thinking skills. So in your plenary, it is ideal if you put up a question that makes them to think and apply what they have learned. Okay, so the question must be something like, no, now if they're learning about a topic, it should not be, okay, what is that topic? No, how can I use this topic in daily life, or how can I use this topic in my school? So that is how you're supposed to frame the question and ask them to think beyond the concept that has been taught. So if you are smart enough, you can convert your starter activities into plenaries. Okay, but it's not that whatever starter that you're starting off with, the same thing you use in plenary. No, if you're starting with an open-ended question, you're going to think about something else in your plenary. Okay, so there are open-ended questions that can be asked, probing questions that can be asked, which is applicative. Then chat-based method of receiving their answers can be followed, and you can also use annotations, ask them to draw. Again, you can use Padlet, sticky notes over here to summarize learning. And if you're smart enough, you will disguise assessments into plenary. Okay, so you want to assess your children, your plenary can be a way to assess them. So now, coming to assessment, what is a feature of an effective formative assessment? Okay, to understand how to frame your formative assessment, you must be able to answer the question, what makes an effective formative assessment? The formative assessment must meet learning objective. Okay, it should be related to your learning objective. The formative assessment must be linked to the learning activity, what you did. It must be inclusive. It should be differentiated. All your children of different learning abilities must be met, must be precise, and must be ongoing and engaging. And at the end, it should be backed up with feedback. If you're not going to give feedback after you assess your children, please forget about assessing, because it doesn't make sense. You're supposed to give a feedback. You did right, this is how you're going to improve, and that feedback must be constructive and quick and immediate. Okay, so that is what makes an effective formative assessment. Offline, how do you do it? By pen paper test, by worksheets, this and that. But online, how do you do it? It's going to be easier, okay, online, because we have so many statistic tools which summarizes and gives you the result at your fingertips. So you do a test, you ask them to do that test, and the computer itself processes the result and tells you where the child went wrong, where the child went right, and then it's very easy for you to give a feedback. So I'll now show you different online assessment methods that can be used. Okay, so you can ask them to draw and explain a process. You can do online quiz. My personal favorite is Kahoot and quizzes. Then you can ask them to match the words to the definitions, or something like that. Fill-ups can be done. Open-ended questioning again can be used. Google Forms or Microsoft Forms can be created, and then they can be used to assess the children. Memory test also can be used. So there are different platforms online where you can create such types of interactive activities. However, yes, it will take a lot of time to create them. You have to be ready to spend time, a minimum of this much, half an hour or 1 hour to create an activity. There's a lot of back end work that goes into it, but believe me, trust me, it's going to be very effective, because the children are going to enjoy it. Now the online assessment is done. What should we not forget? Immediately after the assessment, we must project the success criteria to our students and check if they were successful in class. Now, this gives them ownership towards learning. So they will tick it out. Yes, ma'am, I did this, I did that, and I have completed it. So you have reached your learning objective. So with this, you come to the last and final part of your session, feedback time. Okay, so when I talk about feedback, I feel children give the best feedback, because they are completely true. They give true unbiased opinion and are great judges. So they don't think, okay, is ma'am going to feel bad or ma'am going to feel good? We are going to tell if we felt good, we're going to say that. If not, we're going to say, no, ma'am, I didn't like the session or I didn't understand this. So it is important as teachers to get feedback from your students. So the feedback must be very quick. Okay, it should not waste time. It should be over within a minute. You can polling can be done. Okay, so again, item pool, like I said, or by using Zoom has its own inbuilt pool, polling session, so you can use that. Then you can ask them to send a message on chat about how they felt in the class. Okay, then 5 fingers, you can ask them to rate your session based upon either it went well or it didn't go so well. No, I'm not happy with the session. So you can ask them to do that also. Or nowadays we have these emojis that appear on the screen. When you click it, you can ask them to show that and state how they like the session. So with that, this is how your entire session must be. Okay, so with this we end our checklist. So let's go back to our checklist. In our checklist, we talked about attendance, we talked about learning objectives, success criteria, starter activity, procedure, brain breaks, plenary, were we successful, and finally feedback. So have we completed our learning objective for today? Yes, we have. Okay, so I would like you all to send in your feedbacks in chat if you're watching live on Facebook, so that I will know whether I was successful and whether my audience, my students, enjoyed this session. So with this, I come to the end of my workshop. I would like to say this particular quote. Okay, so teachers, please don't forget, you don't teach a subject, you teach a child, you teach children, and they are the greatest of minds, and it is a huge responsibility on your shoulder. And I wish you the best as you inspire and you listen and you learn and you differentiate and you develop. And I wish you the best, especially when you're teaching. So happy teaching to everyone, and thank you again, Ms. Shivani and Getty, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really wonderful listening to you. You have beautifully explained the lesson plans and how we can, conduct the classes online and, of course, offline, to getting the feedbacks from the student and how we can make it more creative and joyful for the students. I hope that the educators, the teachers who were listening are benefited from whatever you have told us. And I once again thank you for joining in and being a
Thank you,
part
ma'am.
of Getty's disruptive education movement. I could see a comment from Sunila ma'am. She says, wonderful session. Indeed, it was a wonderful session. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Well, with this, we come to an end to today's session. We'll be meeting again soon with another such informative and interesting session. Until then, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.